So thank you for inviting me here, Annette, and also thank you for being here, everyone. Again, AJ, I'm so thrilled that you're here. First of all, thank you for that message that you shared, because that's exactly what happened to me 2.5 years ago. I came undone. And from that moment that I came undone, it was a continuous undoing. And it was an undoing of all I thought I was and all I thought I should be and all the polish and all of the things that I thought was well and whole in the world. And I got an opportunity to let go of those things and surrender to what mattered. So it was probably the last time I was here. First of all, who was here the last time that I spoke here? I see a lot of new faces. And you were here. Thanks for coming back. Anybody on the phone here last time I spoke? Amazing. Thank you. You didn't miss much. It's interesting because what I spoke about the last time, I did a presentation on this new form of Reiki that I've been practicing and teaching. What I was teaching then was what I thought was healing. But what I was really talking about was Reiki. And while that's still a big part of my practice and was a huge part of my healing, like I like to say, it's not the whole story. Okay. So it had to be about around this time in September 2019 that I did that presentation. And I actually taught a Reiki class after. It was a beautiful time in the park. And not far after that, I got this weird rash on my right leg. Now, my beloved Christy here knows about this rash because she's the one that encouraged me to go take a look at it. Because certainly as the healer that I am, well, I'll just take care of that. And it just started to get worse. And then eventually it was like on my whole leg. And I went to the urgent care and I went to the doctor and nobody could seem to tell me what it was. And they said, oh, you know, maybe it's your detergent, or, oh, did you take a walk in the woods recently? And I mean, I owe it to her. She's the one who got me out of the concrete jungle and like put me back into nature. So like, yes, I've been walking in nature. I must have been bitten up by bugs. But it wasn't until her love encouraged me to go get some blood work that I realized that it was cancer. And there was a time of when I got that news is really the beginning of this story, right? Because this story is about resistance, the other R word in my life, besides Reiki at the time. Okay, and that R word was resistance. I'd always been a bit of a rebel. And in my career, I was in research. And at the time, I had been doing cancer research for about 6 years. And I was taught to question everything. Okay, so I had lots of questions when I got that call from the doctor who took me off the train and told me I wasn't going to the business trip that I thought I was heading on. It was about 5 minutes before I got on the train. And I got the call from my primary care doctor who had the blood work in his hands. And he says, Anthony, are you sitting down? And I'd never met this man. He was the head of the practice and I hadn't met him. And he kind of like sat me down and he says, we think you have leukemia. You need to go to the hematologist tomorrow morning. I said, what? Excuse me? I'm sorry. I can't take care of this right now. I have to get on the train. I have a business. I have business. I got to go to DC. Can we take care of this when we come back? So that was the first level of my resistance. I was in denial, right? I had no idea. I wasn't even scared at that point. I was like, why is this guy telling me now? Couldn't he wait? So I calmed down. It eventually hit me about a minute later what he had actually said. And I was really upset. And, you know, I called my boss and I said, hey, look, the doc's the guy that answered. I can't go to this business trip. And he said, my goodness. We'll take care of it. Go to the doctor, get well, let me know. Right. So as shocked as I was, I kind of got in my car and drove home. And, you know, I called Christy and I told her what had happened. And, you know, the next several days were just like kind of like a blur. I was in doctor's visits and getting blood work and just really just what has happened, you know. And at the time I was living alone, and I had just been divorced, and I was getting used to having him in my life half the time, and really getting used to being a parent. But I felt incredibly alone, right? And so all I had was me and my thoughts. And what I thought to do was to immediately jump into all the changes to just start healing, right? I was doing Reiki on myself. I became a strict vegan. I, went to all the sound healings, and I brought all the healers that were my friends to come over to my house. We're doing Reiki shares. We're doing all the things that I could think to do. Meanwhile, I'm getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. Nobody had a diagnosis yet, because there was some testing that needed to be done, some scanning to be done, the surgery to be done. They were all just moving in the direction of this lymphoma, which they eventually identified. So that whole time, even though I thought that what I was doing was healing my body, what I was doing was fighting the cancer. Right? We're raised in a society we're supposed to battle against cancer. We're supposed to fight for our life. And if you know me, I'm a fighter, right? I push back. I ask questions. I want to know why. Why did you tell me to do that? Why are you right and I'm wrong? I should know better. Right? Yeah. I don't know. Looking back on it, I'm going, who was that guy? That was me. Right? And I was becoming undone. So there was a series of doctor visits, and because I'd been in cancer research for many, many years, the first doctor that I went to immediately wanted to start radiation, immediately wanted to put me on pills the rest of my life. There's nothing you can do. This is how we manage it. I said, great, thank you very much. I'm going to go find somebody else. We actually scheduled a surgery, and I went up to Boston to go see one of my healer friends who told me that I didn't need any surgery and I didn't need any chemotherapy. And, don't worry about that. We got this. We're going to take care of you. I cured my wife of her cancer. So I came back from that healing thinking that I wasn't going to get this surgery. I didn't need a diagnosis. It didn't matter, right? I was going to heal it myself because I'm a healer and I have all the people around me that were going to heal it. So I called the doctor and I canceled the surgery. And it was like another few weeks where I just continued to get sicker and sicker and sicker. Meanwhile, I was healing myself. And then my parents came into the equation, who I'd been, I guess, separated from in my heart, not physically, but separated from in my heart for many, many, many years. And of course, they were very sad, and they immediately came to my side when they hadn't really supported or helped me through anything in my adult life at that point. They immediately came to my side to convince me that I needed to take the doctor's advice and there's nothing that I could do about it. I have to go to chemotherapy. And if you're stupid, you're going to do what you think is right. You got to listen to the doctors, Anthony. You got to listen to the doctors. Now, at that point, once again, I'm a healer. The doctors don't know better. I'm in cancer research. That diagnosis was not what he was even in the guidelines, right? I'm like showing him the guidelines and going, where are you getting your information? This is not correct. Why would I take this? Okay. So that was a big burden. It was a huge burden. And what ended up happening over subsequent months, I ended up, so I went back to the original primary care doctor. And I said, look, is there another oncologist that you can recommend me to? I'm really into alternative treatments. Is there something? I've been reading about this. There's some other routes that I can take. So I took all the routes, and he says, well, I really don't recommend that you go any of those other routes. If you had any other kind of cancer, you might be able to really do well with some of those other routes that you're considering. But in this case, it's really bad. Like, I wouldn't go down that route. Really think you need to go see this doctor. He's a specialist. He's open to some of these alternative things that you can do alongside of your treatments that, might support your treatment. And so at that point I said, all right, I'll go see the next doctor, right? And the next doctor came into the room, and now this guy is the teaching professor, the key guy who's the specialist in this particular form of cancer that wrote the guidelines. Ready? We need you to do immunotherapy. Or you need to do immunotherapy. We're going to start you next week. We got to do the lymph node removal. We got to get a final phenotype on it. Now, this is a surgery I had already canceled. And now he's talking about a diagnosis. He thinks in his head, I think that this is going to be the thing for you. And I'm going, you think? Fine, we'll do the surgery. Right? Like with resistance, we did the surgery. We did the surgery. He was exactly right. He pinpointed it right on his head, exactly what was going on with me. And he said, look, you can do the vitamins and the supplements and the herbals and the acupuncture and the sound healing and your Reiki. He's like, do all of that. He's like, but get in the chair. You're going to go for immunotherapy once every other month, every 60 days. So I was crushed. I mean, I was crushed because this guy who was open to all the things, he was still recommending against the very thing that I wasn't going to do because of all the knowledge that I had as a spiritual healer. I knew all about chemotherapy and how it was going to affect me. Yeah. Right. What I had seen was a lot of people who were who had died. I saw the clinical studies. I saw all the negative stuff that was happening. That's what was in my brain. Mm-hmm. And of course, that was going to happen to me, right? But that wasn't the case. And I went through with the immunotherapy, and I had a rough go. I had a really, really rough go because, well, now I know why I had a rough go, but I mean, I was experiencing all the side effects of the medications. I was getting these intense rigor reactions, which made my body shake in convulsions. If you ever had an anxiety attack, it's like an anxiety attack times 1,000, where you actually think you're going to die. And it was a violent experience for me. It was a really violent experience for me. And, I was all Zen walking in there, and I'm doing my healing rituals going in, and, I have the nurses stand aside so I can do my Reiki preparations, right? I didn't want to say the word, but if anybody else would have been like on the outside looking in, who is this guy, right? Like, he's not, I would never learn from him, right? But what I realized when I was going through those reactions, every time I went into the infusion, I had this reaction at least 3 or 4 times. They had to give me a ton of medication to stop that reaction. Then I'd pass out for a few hours, and then I'd wake up and it would happen again, pass out for a few hours. So that whole time I was in resistance. I wasn't allowing the one of the things that was a big part of my healing, wasn't allowing it in. My body was rejecting it. My body was fighting it. My mind was fighting it. I was in the chair fighting cancer. I was battling for my life, and I've done exactly what we were told to do. So I couldn't understand it. One time I actually went back to the doctor, and we were supposed to do an infusion. And he said, oh, you got this giant rash on your legs. It came back. We can't do the chemo. You're having a reaction to the medication. We can't do it. We got to wait another month. Go home. Oh, and stop taking your supplements. We don't know what's causing this. I hit the roof. You probably remember that day where he told me to stop taking the supplements, because she was the one providing me with the supplements from her functional medicine doctor she works for. And on top of it, the supplements that I was taking, I was fighting him because they weren't vegan. This guy stayed up all night researching which were the correct supplements for me to give me and to give to her, and to basically gave me most of them for free. And I was like, I took them all back. I was thumbing my nose at this stuff. You didn't listen to me. This is not what I wanted. I'm taking my cancer into my hands. Still suffering, still getting crazy reactions, still fighting help, fighting assistance, fighting the people who were loving me all around me. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. I was in resistance. And at the time, I couldn't even take care of him. I couldn't have him over. I had no strength in my body to play with you, to watch you, to look after you, to do those things. And I was fighting. And I was fighting so that I could do those things. So about February, I was introduced to someone. Her and I went to this spiritual development seminar. And over the course of that weekend, of course, we were doing all the spiritual things because that's what was actually healing me. And it was, I just didn't know it. But what was happening was a series of unfortunate and also very challenging events that challenged my ego, that helped me become undone so that I could be open enough to finally accept the healing, right? And that didn't actually even occur until about October. And that was 10 months later, right? So imagine going in the chair, immunotherapy, coming home, being in bed for about 3 weeks, having about 3 weeks worth of energy, and then going back into the chair, right? That was my experience in 2020. When during that time, I met a community of people. I had been doing some emotional intelligence work and some leadership work. I'm a constant learner. I wanted to just stay involved. It was all done online. I met this great community of people, and they lifted me up and they supported me. And, they gave me this scholarship because I was going through cancer. So I didn't have to pay thousands of dollars for this program that I never would have had access to unless I had cancer, right? So like there was a whole group of people who were holding me. And then I started to really feel that love. I really started to open up my mind and open up my ears and listen to the people around me, even my parents, even my former spouse had opinions and things, loving things to share with me that were part of my healing that I couldn't hear before. And there was this one day, we were in a leadership seminar the night before, and it was a Friday night. And I said, hey guys, could you do me a favor and send me some love tomorrow when I'm going to the chair? I got another infusion. I'm not going to be with you this weekend. I might be there this weekend. I don't know. Can you send me some love? I'm going to go to the chair. Yeah, Anthony. Oh my God, we're holding you. You're going to do great. It's going to be great. You're not going to have those reactions anymore. Just keep a positive mindset, right? This is the empowerment community. And it's also during COVID, right? So the next morning I get to the infusion center and there's nobody there. And I look up, and who walks in the door but one of my coaches and the owner of the training center who'd been leading our leadership training. 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd never met either one of them in 8 months. And they decided to take the trek together to come in and meet me there. They weren't even allowed in, but they came in and they sat with me and they talked with me and they held my hand. I wish I had the picture, but man by the name of Joe Henderson was like a savior to me. He walked in and he said, let me pull you aside. For anybody who's on the phone that knows Joe, you'll know this, but he pulled me aside and he said, Anthony, what if you just stop fighting the cancer? Because you remember when I met you and I said, we got more in common than you think? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I went through it too. And I almost died a few times. And, it wasn't until I actually started allowing the healing to happen the way it was supposed to happen and not the way I wanted it to happen that I actually allowed that healing. I said, so what do you mean? Now I'm just open. And he says, what if like instead of fighting the infusion, you just pictured it? He's like, look, you're a Reiki guy. You're doing healing with divine energy. What if you saw the chemotherapy as divine love entering into your veins? Oh my God. A perspective that opened up my mind. Forget it. But I was open. And I remembered what he said. And I did this little meditation and I pictured divine love coming through my veins, coming out of the drip bag and just circulating all through my body, through all of my blood and all of my organs. And it was a blood cancer. So I required a lot of divine love to go through my body. And 1 hour into the treatment where I was just getting ready, getting prepared for that reaction, nothing. Another hour went by, nothing. Another hour and another hour and another hour, nothing happened. I didn't react. And it hit me at the end of that treatment. I got out like 3 hours earlier than I had usually. They had to keep the place open for me because they had to stop treatments and then start it again. And that day, when I allowed that healing to happen, that was the beginning of the start of my healing. That was the beginning of my redoing, where I was able to be vulnerable enough to let love in so that I could be healed, so that I could become whole again. And this is what we're doing in Reiki. We're transmitting love through our hands, but I was blocking it. I don't know why. Maybe because my mind was not healed, which is what the divine allows us to do, to heal the illusions, to heal the mind, which wants us to do other things so it can stay safe. But I had a healing that day. The next month I went back, no reaction. The next month I went back, no reaction. The next blood work that I had, my white blood cells went back to the normal range. Everything that was all out of whack in my blood work went back to the normal range. I was healed. I was healed. I had to finish the therapy. I finished this past March. I went all the way through 2021. A whole year of having short treatments and no reactions. I was able to keep my Reiki practice open. I was coaching people. In fact, my business thrived during a time when I was ill, or supposedly ill, and I was healing. So my message to you all is stop resisting. Stop resisting things in your life, even when you don't like them, right? We teach in Reiki to be grateful for the many blessings, including the stuff that pisses us off, including the things that have us worried or fearful. You know, this is what I teach, and I had an opportunity to live what I was teaching. And so that was what really healed me, allowing and stopping resistance. So whatever it is you're in resistance to in your life, I'm here to encourage you and to empower you and inspire you to knock it off. Because what you're in resistance to is actually your greatest opportunity for health and healing. Thank you.